You guys ready back there? Okay, fire away.
How do you assess just all the, not just the guys you brought in, but the guys that you retained? You know, starting with just what you did with Josh, I guess.
Yeah. Josh and I had a brief conversation after the season ended, and we always talk anyway. We keep an open dialogue, but yeah, he always stops by before he leaves town, and so we talked about it, and we both said let's see if we can do something. I know the way the market had shifted since he did his deal. He played 4 seasons on that, and the quarterback contracts are always quite unique, and it's the one market where, for whatever reason, whoever's next up sometimes just goes to number 1 or number 2. It's not the way I would choose to do it, but that's the way some people choose to do it. And so I think Josh fell to like 13th or 14th, and just felt like even if he didn't win the MVP, it was a conversation I wanted to have with him, this offseason. And so we did that, and then he spoke to his Patrick Collins, his rep, and I've been talking to Terry, Mr. Pegula, for a while on this, and so we talked about some things, some structure ideas. So we kind of had an idea of what we could do, and they still take time. These are complex contracts in a lot of ways, but we wanted to treat him fairly, and he's obviously done a lot for the team, the city, the organization, and appreciate their work to get it done. And we were very excited on our end to have him secured, add 2 years, and he's a Bill at this point at least through 2030, which is good for everybody.
Joey Bosa talked yesterday. It seemed like you guys were pretty aggressively pursuing him. Was he somebody that you guys, as soon as he became available, zeroed in on? And how concerned are you about the last 3 years he talked about and the injuries and everything like that?
Yeah, Matt. Joey's a heck of a player. We've seen that up close and in person. He about put Josh in a pretzel here one year. I was like, sweaty palms watching Josh get up. And, that infamous game out in L.A., I think he only had 1 sack, but he was all over Peterman. And I yelled at him for damaging his career. It started there. But in all, you've always, the Bosas, them. I scouted those guys in college, elite talents. And, yes, he has, to your question, Matt, he has had some injuries. Most of them, if you watch him play, you see why. He plays the game violent. He plays it reckless, without care for his body, which you love. But sometimes, we've seen it here with Milano a little bit too. He plays that wrecking ball style. I think Joey does it. But he knows how to rush. He hasn't lost that. He played 14 games last year, 41% of the play time. So he can help us. We need to have him help us through the year, and then also, if hopefully we can qualify for the playoffs and have him fresh, ready to help us down the stretch. I think if he had never really had any medical issues or any setbacks, his market would be in a lot different place than where we were able to land with him.
You have a plan then, or are you still kind of working through that with how to keep him healthy and make sure that he's at his best at the end of the year?
Yeah, we have a plan with every player, not just guys who have been injured. We have a plan. We have our performance guys do a really good job. Joe Collins, Nate Bresky, and now Will Greenberg's our head strength coach. But we put an individualized plan for each of these guys. Again, if he came here and never missed a game, we still bring him in, talk to him about things. There's guys that haven't missed games, but they're dealing with stuff, and you want to ask guys like that, do you practice every day? Do you need a vet day? What do you do on Mondays? Do you lift after Mondays, or do you wait till Tuesday? All those things. So we will definitely have a plan, in this case, for Joey, and, from your spring to getting through training camp to the first part of the season to the latter part of the season.
Brandon, I know
Might be ballparking a little bit, but where are you at in space, and how active do you see the team being going forward right now?
Yeah, I don't have an actual number for you. We're still working through some things, but we're running tight with knowing you have to save money for the draft picks. And I think I've talked to you guys about it before. Even if you're under on this top 51, we've had to do moves in the past at the 53 cut when you have to, include everyone, practice squad, whoever's gone on IR, injury replacement cost, all that. So we're getting thin. We've changed stores that we're shopping in.
Your stated goal in free agency is to have every hole filled as much as possible going into the draft. Number 2 corner right now with Rasul still being unsigned, I don't know that you could say is filled. What's the plan there, as much as you could share, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 2 things. One, we got a month and a half till the draft, so we'll continue to look. Number 2, Jay, probably what I said last year when we traded Steph in early April, we don't play until September, so give us time to work through it. Things change. People pay using that position. Somebody may have paid a corner that makes another one expendable at some point. So we will continue to monitor not only that position but other positions. Right now, it's about building competition and depth across the roster before we get to the draft, and then once you get there, and then when you get done with the draft, you kind of see how that fell. What did you land? Now, what are your holes? And again, post-draft, some people may get heavy and say, you know what, I can release a guy now or June 1st, spread his cap out. So we'll continue to roster build. It never, in a perfect world, you would always love to stand up here and say, we can go play games right now. I'm not, professing that, but we'll continue to work at it. And again, I don't think that's the only spot we got to continue to get better at.
Hoyt and Ogunjobi, could you speak to the priority of the defensive front, and then just comment on what Hoyt and Ogunjobi bring to the table?
Yeah, both of those guys. So Hoyt is a guy that was a year ago was a restricted free agent. He got the second round tender. He was a guy we were tracking to see what the Rams did. Really thought he was our type of player and knows how to rush. Can play multiple spots, versatile, motor. Just understands the game. And Ogunjobi's a guy. I knew him he's from North Carolina. I didn't know him personally, but knew him through. When I was with the Panthers, he was playing at Charlotte, and he actually went to Ragsdale High where my cousin taught and went. So he's a guy I knew who he was in high school, just to be as good as he was there. So guy we've tracked. We've actually followed him before, but either couldn't financially make it work or whatever. And I think he's a guy that, we look at as can provide some interior depth rush. Pittsburgh was using him a little bit different than Cincinnati did. I think he had a 7-sack season. Not as many sacks the last few years in Pittsburgh's D. What he was asked to do, maybe a little more two-gapping than penetrating. And while I'm on those guys, there's a couple things. Part of the delay, I'll start with Larry. Part of the delay with Larry was he received, around this time after we agreed, he got a notice that a PED, pending suspension. So he came into my office yesterday. We did not know it when we agreed the other night. So had a conversation, and I give him credit because it's early in the process. The league doesn't even know about it the way that it's done by an independent group. But he was very forthright. Larry's he was Pittsburgh's man of the year. He's a good man. He's played 8 years in the league and never had a blip. And so, that's obviously frustrating for him and a little bit of a setback for us. And so, but we've talked it through we're in a good spot, but that's part of the delay. We did get him here yesterday, and there's some contractual things that we've had to work through. And so he hasn't officially signed yet, but he should be signing shortly. But again, so he will be out the first 6 games. And the second curveball here is Hoyt we knew about. So we were aware of his, and I would not have done 2 guys, but we did a 3-year deal with Hoyt knowing his situation. Same thing, he's been in the league 5 years. I think his was earlier. We were made aware of it. There's a thing we can get with the league that we can find out his status we knew, and we talked it through with his agents. So, so it's not ideal to have 2 guys with that. But both guys have never had any issues off the field. And, it's a tough lesson of where do you get your supplements or whatever happened. And I think Larry you guys can ask him, I think he's planning to talk to the media. Mike will be up next because he has signed. My understanding from Mike thinks, he knows what happened, but and then Larry does not know, still looking into it, but wanted to just expedite it and be done. He could have drug it out. So we're going to have to, and we've talked about this since we got that news yesterday, we're going to have to kind of treat this as if we know now that a couple of guys are, injured in camp, and you're going to, you put them on IR to start. So the way that would work, those guys will be out the 6 games. They can be out they have to be out of the building 4, and then they can come back for 2 and begin play week 7. So they'll be with us in the off-season program, the training camp, and then when you make the 53 cut. So again, we'll be okay. It's just kind of planned for one. The other one, he literally got the letter, Larry did this week. Honestly, did not have to tell us because the league, when I called them, they were unaware of it, and it all added up to when they get these tests, there's more than one sample. There's one sample, and then like 3 weeks later is the next sample. Until both have been tested, the league is not made aware of it. And so, but again, we'll embrace those guys. And if they were guys that this had happened before, we probably would have avoided them. But again, Larry's been in the league, man of the year, 8 years, and sometimes, whatever. And again, he doesn't. You can ask him, but my understanding is he is not knowing, what exactly occurred, and so we'll see.
Is there a cap limit on those guys who are placed on the suspended list?
So once they are today, no. Once you sign them, but when they go on, it does come off, and some happens in reconciliation after the season, but a little bit, yes.
Decision. I know you talked about it some, but after agreeing to terms with Larry and then finding out, and now knowing you have 2 of those, why still
stay with it? Yeah, you guys know how this works. You guys have seen this before, where you get frustrated, like somebody agrees, and then 2 days pass, and then they change their mind or whatever. Well, guess what? Everyone else has already agreed and signed, so the pool has been thinned out. And so by the time we learn this, and what are your options? You either stay with the player, or a lot of other players have agreed to terms. Maybe we would have, we definitely wouldn't have gone into this with 2 guys facing this. But at this point, choosing Larry's position, since we agree with him, there's a lot of other D tackles off the market. And so that's why we, and again, he was straight up with, as soon as he walked in my office yesterday, just to talk, and I respect that about him.
And then Josh Powell Or what do you like about him?
Josh is love Josh's game. I would say the first thing, Mark, excellent route runner. Like really, you don't. He does not give indicators. A lot of guys give indicators whether they're about to stop, break, sets guys up. I thought he had. If you watch his film last year, I thought there were a couple touchdowns that got missed that he double moved, and. On the card, he's around 4.5, but I'd say his play speed's faster. Build to speed when he's up and running. He can play inside. He can play out. He's a smart player. We look for that in this offense so that Joe can move these guys around. He's a guy that we don't really get into the X and Z. We'll put him all over and, again, if he wants to play inside, play out. But good player. Really was a guy that has been on some rosters with some good receivers. He talked to me about, I was asking him where he learned his releases and some of his stuff, and Kaiir Elam was the guy he kept referencing that, and, that's a pretty good one to learn from. He's 25 years old, still think like, I don't think he's hit his ceiling, Mark. I think he can still play. So, you never know how the free agency is going to turn, but excited to add him to the group.
Where do you things stand with Christian Benford with the contract extension?
Yeah, I don't. We've been able to get some done, Joe, and at the end of the day, we love Christian. I don't really get into negotiations or anything like that, but love Christian and excited he'll be back this season, and we'll see if it works out now, later down the road to keep him here. Which again. By what I've always said, we want to draft, develop, and re-sign our own, and so excited that he'll be here this year, especially knowing, as Jay referenced, we're thin at the position right now.
Just to clarify, Larry found out yesterday about the suspension.
I don't know specifically, but it was this week, and you'd have to ask him specifically what it was, but yeah, his. He told me as soon as he walked in, so I'm assuming he learned the day before or something. He just got the notification, and again, I think the B sample hasn't even come back yet. Yeah.
Vaughn, is that door still open? Like, where you Vaughn right now?
Yeah, tough deal. Love Vaughn. Really appreciate what he brought here. We all know his year one really started off with a bang. Made some clutch sacks for us to help close some games. Had the injury. Year two, not what he had hoped for, and I thought last year really came back and did some good things. We just decided where the salary was, to try and see if we could step back, look at the field, see what else was out there, but we did not. I had a very good conversation with him the other day before we released him, and would never close the door on bringing him back, whether it's now, whether it's later in the spring or in season. He really, beyond his skill set on the field, he brought a championship mentality to our team, to the guys, and if he's not back, he'd be missed in that standpoint for sure.
What was it like a year after you parted ways with so many veterans and leaders and made trades and to get under the salary cap? What was it like finally being able to build long-term, looking ahead to the future beyond this season with some of the guys that you added?
Yeah, John, first off, it was exciting, to get a lot of these guys done that we can, some of our young players that we drafted before we hit free agency, to get, obviously Josh, but Rousseau, Terrell Bernard, all these guys that we could, Shakir, I think we got Shakir done first. All these guys that are kind of homegrown, you love. That's the perfect way to do it. But we know, for whatever reasons, as guys leave or certain things don't work out, you got to fill in different pockets with free agency, or trades. And so last year helped us, I wouldn't say reset, but helped us be able to do some of the things, knowing from a planning standpoint, you have to start looking what is down the road and who's coming up, and to make sure, if we had not done some of those things last year, would have made it very difficult to definitely keep at least the ones we've kept so far. And so that was definitely a conversation a year ago when we made those tough decisions of some of these guys. Hey, if they keep trending in the right direction, we'd like to have the capital to be able to, re-sign them. Again, it takes two, and I commend all these guys for really wanting to be here in Buffalo. I know you guys have talked to them all, but all those guys I loved it. They just really telling their agents, hey, I'd love to be here. Let's see if we can get something done, and put our heads together and found terms that we were all comfortable with.
Really fit in well here last year. It was his only year here. Was that just a matter of not being on the same page monetarily, or?
Yeah, I mean, we love Mac and appreciate what he did, and definitely had a lot of conversations. I'd say you'd have to ask Mac, for sure, but we were definitely interested in bringing him back.
What led to finally moving on from Kaiir?
Yeah, that's a tough one, John. It really is. I'm gonna get emotional because I love Kaiir, and it didn't work, and it stinks, and it's not, it's not for a lack of effort, on any side here, and the guy worked so hard. He had some bad breaks. Like anything, there's probably things he was like, man, if I'd made this play or that play, maybe that, this game is about confidence, and especially that is a hard position. And Kaiir had some good moments here. He really did, whether some of the interceptions, thought he had some good training camps. But in the end, he and I had a conversation after the season about where he was going into his last year. And, like anything, he knows the expectations, and he's a competitor. It was hurting him to not play, and whether it was to be a healthy scratch or to suit up but not really get in the game. And ultimately, it's on me. I made the selection that didn't work out, and I own that, and that's you don't want those to happen. But man, I'm rooting for Kaiir. I really am. I hope, in the conversations I had with teams, I really told them, like, you would be getting a great young man. And I mean, the guy worked so hard, and I think I'm confident, maybe a reset for him. Give him a chance. I'm pulling for him. I think everyone at One Bills Drive hopes it works out for him.
What's your outlook at Hunter? You have Jake on the roster. Sam signed a contract elsewhere.
With respect to what's your?
How do you see the team attacking that position this offseason? You only have one on the roster. Typically, the team has had more than that going into a season with an unproven player like Camarda. How do you expect to attack that position this offseason?
Okay. Yeah, we'll look. We'll bring in competition for Jake. We like Jake coming out a lot, and he really. I thought he had some good first couple of years last year. Didn't go as well for him, but yeah, the same as corner. We'll continue to monitor that, who's out there. I wouldn't see us putting a big price tag, whether it's a veteran or, in the draft. You guys good? LaVisca. Yeah, good question. Wide receiver, kick returner would kind of be his, he's been dynamic with the ball in his hands. I know he was a, former second-round pick. We had some love for him when he came out. I think that was the COVID draft. He's had the same thing, some ups and downs in his career, moved to a few different teams. The kickoff is the league is really pushing hard to get the kickoff back into play. I know last year with the rule change, we have the owners' meetings in a couple weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if There's more changes made to up the percentage of kickoffs, and so we do want to have some options back there. So he would be back there for that. Also, however Joe would want to use him, receiver. I mean, he's a guy you want to get the ball in his hands in various ways. He's good with it, which most kick returners kind of are that way. But very dynamic, and he can hit a home run. Thank you, guys.